Every story has an author. Every author has a story. Join us for off-the-page interviews, inside stories, and a look into the world of publishing. This is Page Turners.
Welcome to Page Turners, presented by the Agency of Brown Books. I'm Julie Fisk, and I'm so glad that you're joining us again today. We have an inspirational story about the triumph of the human spirit. Welcome Sharon Orlap and Tu Hong Tran. Sharon was the Global Chief Diversity Officer and Senior Vice President of Human Resources for Walmart, but has branched out and written the memoir of my other guest, Tu Hong Tran. It's called Standing Up After Saigon, the triumphant story of hope, determination, and reinvention. Thank you so much for joining us today, ladies.
Thanks for having us.
So I'm fascinated by this story, and first you have to tell me, Sharon, how did you get involved with Tu Hong and start this whole process?
Well, it's really interesting. It's a lot of serendipity. While I was at Walmart, I used to always have a group every year of 25 mentees, and I wanted to make sure they were from different countries, different backgrounds, etc. After I retired from Walmart, one of my mentees, Hua Wang, reached out to me. He said, if you ever meet Tu Hong, you need to hear her story. And that's all he said to me. And so I met with her when I was visiting in Arkansas. It was right near Thanksgiving 2016, and she shared her story with me, and it grabbed me and wouldn't let go. And so here's the brief story about Tu Hong, and she'll share a lot more. She was born a normal, happy, healthy child, but got polio as a toddler and then couldn't walk or run, had to crawl on the ground. Oh. And then when Saigon fell, her father narrowly escaped from South Vietnam to the U.S., but the family was told he'd been killed in a helicopter crash. So they actually held his funeral and mourned him and thought that he had died. He kept trying to find them. It took 5 years for him to locate his family in Saigon, and then another 10 years before they immigrated to the U.S. So the family was apart for 15 years. But when Tu Hong arrived in the United States, she had surgery that enabled her to stand upright for the first time after crawling on the ground for 17 years. And so when I heard that, I said, Tu Hong, you have to write a story. You have to tell your journey. And she said, I've been looking for somebody to write my book. And I said, pick me, pick me.
So what was it about Sharon, Tu Hong, when you met her? Why did you think, well, this is the person. She's the one who needs to tell my story for me?
Yes, Sharon is very genuinely. So after our coworker introduced us through the text group, and then we set up the meeting to meet at a coffee shop, and then we met. The first time we met, and I just felt like I known Sharon for a long time. I believe that there's a trust between us. It just suddenly, the trust built right there, right? Mm-hmm. And later on, over the time that we talk each other, and then that's what I share with Sharon. I believe in faith. I think that's faith that create the bridge, build the bridge, between us. So that's what I just open the story and share with her every single, from my childhood through the year that I came to the United States. So we ran over the time. We set up like 1 hour for the meeting. So when we rushed to our car and we keep still talking, and then Sharon said, your story is fascinating. Are you thinking about writing a book? And I just thought, I thought about it, but I didn't find anyone yet. So Sharon said, I will make your dream come true. so I said, yes, let's talk about it. And then we exchanged the phone number and everything, and we set up the call from Saigon.
So how long after that? What transpired from the moment that you guys said yes to when you finally started writing together? Like, how long did that whole process take?
So I said, we need to start. I want to write your book. Yeah. You've got a great story. And so we created a project plan. We started talking that following Sunday. We said every Sunday we will FaceTime and we'll put together a project plan. So we had laid out this project plan that was going to take a year. And then another one of my mentees, Kelvin Goss, who's a publisher with Brown Books, told me about Brown Books Publishing. So I reached out. He introduced me to Millie Brown, the CEO of Brown Books. And so I had a conversation with Millie. And in the meantime, we were doing a lot of research and looking at memoirs and the outline flow. And I was putting together a book proposal. And so I'd called Millie and had written about 30 or 40 pages of a book proposal. I said, I'm working on this book proposal. I need some advice. And Millie said, just write the dang book. And so I was like, oh, okay. And at the time, there was a lot of rhetoric about immigrants and refugees. I thought the timing's perfect. And so we wrote the book from about March 2016 to June 2016. And so Tu Hong and her dad would share their stories with me. I traveled and spent several weeks with them, captured it on recording. And as I would write the chapters, I would share it with Tu Hong and her dad. They'd review it and make revisions. And so that's how we shared it back and forth until we sent the final manuscript in at the end of June.
At the end of June. So that's just a few months.
Yes.
So this came very quickly. So now, Tu Hong, when you and your father started sharing this story with Sharon, were there ever moments that were difficult to relive?
Yes, for me, that is good, difficult that when I was like share, it bring back all the old memories back, right? Especially like the time that I was a child and I just like crawling on the wall, on the floor, and then how people mistreat me. Those are the difficult times that it's hard to take, but I have to say this is the reality. And then the time that when I, not by myself, but my family, also that mean whole the Vietnamese people facing with the new rules, that mean under the communism rules. It's like we lost everything. Completely, that's what I shared with Sharon, that it's just like the world like upside down. And we've been facing like poverty, mistreat, and also myself as a child, lack of food and hungry so many nights when we went to bed, and also malnutrition. So those are the times it was difficult. Then time that when I moved to the state, we're facing all the new life. We happy at the time to be united as a family, and also facing with the day-to-day activities, learning a new language, learning how to drive, right? We completely driving different, like motorcycle, not a car. Those are the things that really like tough, and at the same time building a relationship as father and daughter and family as well.
Right.
And on my dad's side, it was tough for him as well. He had to be thought about all the years that he'd been escaped from the north to the south during against with they call Viet Minh, another communism form as well back in the 1945. Then during the war, Vietnam War, he was like in a war zone every night, and then that's what brought back his memories, and he got a nightmare. Those are the difficult times, and he shared with Sharon, and then at night he got the nightmare on that.
Has he read the book yet?
Yes, he hasn't read the book completely, but I review with him chapter by chapter, especially the chapter that talk about his childhood, and then during the time he's searching for us, that we lost all contact completely. Those that it was hard for him, so we took the break. Sometimes I just talked to Dad. I said, Dad, let me revise it myself, because he shared with me like I think every day when we at dinner table. So I knew his story through him. So I just revised it based on what I got it from him, and then we can talk it later. And then after a few days, he said he was concerned. He said, where we at? Let's review it again.
Right.
So those are the times that mean we start rebonding and build the father relationship. Our relationship like gets stronger and stronger during that time as well.
That's great. So in building the story, you're building your relationship as well.
Yes.
And Sharon, this has to be challenging for you as well as a ghostwriter to try to get the stories from them,
Yes.
especially the difficult ones. On top of it, it has to be difficult to hear. Can you tell us a little bit about the ghostwriting process?
I can. So one of the things that helped was I went to Arkansas and spent several weeks with Chin, Tu Hong's father, and her. And it was very difficult getting the stories and probing, because you could see how painful the memories were, and they were causing nightmares. There were times when I had to say, do we need to take a break? Do we need to stop? But as a ghostwriter, I truly feel that ghostwriters give a voice to the voiceless, and that the story had to be told. And there were times when I would ask, do we just need to walk away from it, right? Or do we need to stop for a while? But her dad and Tu Hong would always come back to it, so I think that was important. But I think ghostwriters play a significant role in sharing the stories that need to be told. And for various reasons, people might not be able to tell them. But I think it's a very interesting profession, and I think it's a noble profession.
It is. And I'm so glad that you were there to help them tell the story. And you know, it's interesting to me because there's the personal aspect of standing up after Saigon, but then also the historical aspect. And there has been so much emphasis and talk about Vietnam lately, but standing up after Saigon has a very different slant.
I think what's interesting is when we were doing research about memoirs from North Vietnamese or South Vietnamese, there's very little that's written from a civilian point of view. There's many military memoirs from people who've fought in the wars, but there's so little about what was life like after the Americans pulled out in 1973 or after Saigon fell in 1975. And then the U.S. and Vietnam had no relationship for 20 years. It wasn't until 1995.
Wow.
And so her story tells us what that day-to-day struggle was like and what living under communist rule is really like. So I think it's an important story for people of all countries to understand and to learn from.
Absolutely. So Tuhan, how do you feel that your personal story, how do you want that to be eye-opening to people in the world?
Yes, especially that, like Sharon mentioned a little bit, that when the communists, we call it we named them as a Viet Cong in general, right? They took over the country, then definitely cover everything outside it, completely outside from the war. That means people cannot contact other people out another country, and they block all the communication, the media from surrounding Vietnam. Right? And I would like to make sure that and share with the readers, the audience, that what the real life that the Vietnamese people have been facing, myself personally and my family, that we got mistreated and we lost everything. They took everything from us,
Right.
and blindsided us everything. So those are the main key, that mean to show the people that that's what is how the life in Vietnam, not every people, Vietnamese people have it facing. Then also about my life when I got polio I was 2 or 3 years old. How I crawled on the floor, and
You crawled on the floor.
yes, so I crawled that for a few years, and then over the years, I have to be figured out how I can manage it to move in, because it's so dirty. My hand got dirty every single time it's rain, and it's so. And then my knee got hurt because it's scratching it, and I got a hole on my knee, and my mom had to patch it every single time. And over the years, she just creative. She put all kind of like feature in there, and like apples and all kind of like animals that I like it, and patched it, and also like Mickey Mouse. Like I love Mickey Mouse at that time. Then those are the year that mean that we facing not only under the communism, the poverty, but that mean how I've been facing with the difficult, like I didn't get any medical treatment because we didn't have we were so poor, we really like didn't have any money to pay for the treatment. Then I have to be facing with that, and then my mom and my brother sister been forced to the central, they call central farming. It's lucky for us that because our house like small and old, the government didn't take it from us. But some family, they just lost the house. So suddenly over the night they lost everything, so they became homeless.
I have to ask you, I mean, you're dealing with communism, with poverty, with polio, with crawling on the ground. Like, where did you find the strength? You went from that to where you are today. Where did you find the strength?
So one other thing is hope. Hope is always, somehow it just infused in me. And one time that hope is infusing me when we found out the news that our dad died in the helicopter crash, right? And we had a funeral for him at church, and also we had the praying session for him like 49 days because it's a Vietnamese culture. And during the praying session, and I look at his picture without his body, and I just say, no, that's not die. It wasn't die at all. He might be just lost somewhere, and he might be still alive. That's what the hope started. Build up very strong in me. Then when I crawled on the ground like that, and insect is my friend, right? And I look at the kid in my neighbor, they just running and playing. I said, no, I want to have fun with them. So I start like reinvention how I can manage around on the ground. So I just sit up and then squatting around. And I just ask them, hey, I would like to join with you guys. And those are the kids welcome me with open arms. They show me how to play the game, and I just play with them with that.
That's wonderful. So whenever you talk to people in the United States and tell them that you had polio, I imagine that many of them don't even realize that polio still exists in the world.
Yes, definitely. They thought it's just like very strange term for them. They said, what kind of polio? So I challenged them. I said, why don't you just go Google it and find out? And they did. It was really funny when they did the research on that, and they came back and shared with me what they found out. And I told them, I'm really happy that you already spent time to research about polio. Then I start share with them about more what polio and how to create people deformed. how they moving around. So those are the times it's fascinated me because I felt like polio have been. I share the polio disease. For the young generation, they can learn about it.
Absolutely. And how old were you when you finally stood upright, when you were able to do that?
It was when I was 19 years age.
I bet. Do you remember that moment?
Yes, it was another life-changing for me as well, because I was in the ground level for like years, right? The first time ever that I get my leg brace and my crutches, and then the therapist have a big bell around me, and she comforted me. She said, "Don't worry, I will make sure that you don't fail." And the first time ever that I can feel that something in my brain, the chemical brain, is moving with like different that height level, and I was like, it was strange. It was strange, really strange. Feeling at that moment, and it's still like real for me until now. When first time I got up and walked in the first step.
Oh, and Sharon, you had to just be loving it as she's sharing this story with you. How lucky are you that you got to be the person to share this with everyone else?
I know. I feel so fortunate to have met Tu Hong and her dad, and that they invited me into their lives and shared their stories with me. And it's got these powerful messages. When I look at everything that Tu Hong's been through and how she's had to reinvent herself through polio, through war, through poverty, through coming to the United States, learning a new language, learning how to drive, it pales in comparison to anything that I've faced or anything that I think a lot of people have faced. And so I think her story gives inspiration and empowerment to people about how do I approach this differently, whatever this challenge is I'm facing. And I think it's a message that needs to be told.
Absolutely. Who do you think is going to get the most from this? Who will really appreciate standing up after Saigon?
So I think there's several audiences. I think people who are memoir enthusiasts who love true stories, people who want empowerment, inspiration, hope, and determination. I think history buffs, Vietnam veterans. I also think the Vietnamese community, and also those who are differently abled, which actually right now in the U.S. is 1 in 4 people are differently abled. And so those who know that there's a lot of challenges in life, but how do we include everybody? I think it's a message for many people.
And Tu Hong, what would be the one message that you would really hope that people would take away from standing up after Saigon?
That be hopeful, always believe in yourself, and also that when you down, there's nothing will be end of the war.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for your courage and for sharing your story. And Sharon, thank you also for bringing her story to the world so we can all learn from it. And thank you so much for joining us again on Page Turners.